Okay, so I am teaching my students a lesson on creative writing, um, third grade. So my SWEBOT, identify the progression of a piece of creative writing, and my assessment, students will detail the basic progression of a piece of creative writing. So to start off, whenever I'm doing anything with writing, I want to start by reading to them with a mentor text. A mentor text is any sort of writing that exhibits the writing you're teaching them, or discusses that writing technique so that they can hear it and know kind of what they're striving toward, as far as what they're going to eventually write. So it's really great to do. So I'm just going to put students listen to teacher read aloud. And then here I'm going to put teacher method is hook, and teacher reads CYOA. That's a choose your own adventure book. There are these books that allow you, they're written in second person, and a lot of times you get to a page and it's like, oh, you find a temple in the jungle. If you explore the temple, go to page 62. If you leave the way you came, go back to page 25. And really exciting, really fun. They're a great example of creative writing. So teacher reads CYA book to students and explains to students to pay attention to plot progression. So I wouldn't be super specific for that when I'm explaining to the students because I want them to kind of use their own thought process before we get into direct instruction. But I'm still telling them to kind of pay attention. Hey, think about how the story begins and think about each of the choices we make and how that leads to different actions in the plot. So they just have something to kind of marinate on as we're talking. And I'm going to leave 10 minutes for that. Reading usually takes a little bit. Then I want them to think, pair, share. I think think, pair, share is a great way. And those usually take a while. I'm going to put 10 minutes for that as well. For students to share what they're thinking so they can, they just heard it and now they're going to, let it come together in their mind and share it with their peers. So I'm just going to put coach, because that's sort of what you're doing there, and teacher facilitates. And then also, I'm just going to put a little note to myself, think 2 minutes, pair 3 minutes, and share 5 minutes, just so I know when I want to be telling them to move on. Next, they're going to do a little activity because now they're ready, they're into the lesson, and I'm going to have them write their own next step to a CYOA choice. So I'm going to give them a choice. So I'm going to put model, and I'm just going to put model, coach, fade because I'm really doing all of these things at once. But I like keeping it in one contained area, at least for this, just because it helps me keep it as one sort of activity instead of breaking down my lesson into a million different parts. And I'm going to put teacher explains how students will create their own next step to a choice given by teacher. So I'm going to assign them one of the choices in the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Create their own next step to a choice given by teacher to write, trying to follow natural progression of story. So in this, and then teacher then monitors work. So in this instance, right, they've heard what's going on in the Choose Your Own Adventure book, they've heard how the story progresses, so I want them, just based on what they've heard, to see if they can imitate that in their own writing. Now, my students, we read Choose Your Own Adventure books, I read them to them throughout the year, so they're pretty familiar to it, so they have a good grasp on it. You know your own students, you might not be able to try something with this much autonomy this early in the lesson, but if your students are familiar with the material and they're okay with it, then by all means go for it. Next, I'm going to have students share with their group and receive feedback. I think it's super important in writing for students to share what they've done with their group. One, so they have something to be proud of, and two, they can hear what they did well, and then they can hear what other people maybe did a little better that they want to incorporate in their work in the future. So, and while that's going on, I'm going to put IA, which means informally assess. because I will be informally assessing how they've done in the lesson so far by listening to their discussion. So teacher IA, I'll write it out here, informally assesses students based on their conversations. Good. Next, day 2. And I'm going to make this a 2-day lesson. I think lessons, big writing lessons, we're conveying a lot of important material, should be more than a day, just to split it up. So first, we have a little review. I'm just going to put students listen to teacher. And here, whoops, not read aloud. No more of that for today. And here, it's just teacher reviews what was covered the day before. And so the idea there is that you just, as a teacher, you go up there, you talk for about 5 minutes about what happened the day before, just to kind of activate their prior knowledge. I'll put that as the method. Activate prior knowledge. So we're aware. Then what I'm going to have them do is direct instruction time. So I am going to now create anchor chart on creative writing progression. And so now, and I'm going to have students listen to teacher and answer questions. Also, one thing that you want to make sure you're doing, over here in this green bar, I'm going to put notes, and then I'm going to put any supplies I may need. So CYOA book, and then personal reference sheet for anchor chart. So I know that I need to make a sheet just so I don't make sure I don't forget anything about what I want my anchor chart to look like, so that when I make it, it turns out the way I want it to be. That'll probably take about 10 minutes. Then I'm going to be explaining a pretty big activity, so I'm just going to put students listen to teacher. And I'll probably take about 4 minutes once the questions are said and done, where model and teacher explains and models how students will use CYOA book in groups and detail different aspects of a creative writing piece that they find in their CYOA book. So in this, the students are going to be in groups. They're going to take a Choose Your Own Adventure book, and then they're going to go through one of the possible stories and say, and label, okay, and they're going to make a little graphic organizer. So I'll put that in the notes, graphic organizer for students, so that I know that they'll need that. And what they're going to do is go through and write, okay, beginning, and then list what happens at the beginning, and then, you know, rising action, and put some of the initial actions, then character decisions, responding actions, ending. And so they're going to have an example of creative writing detailed, so they can see the aspects of creative writing, and then they can see how it manifests itself in this specific story, so they can refer to it later on. And then I'll give them 15 minutes for that. Students complete activity, teacher, and then I'll put fades, coach and fade. Teacher observes and helps in case anyone needs it, you know, just or answers questions. And then we'll have about 6 minutes left over for students share with class. Again, I love having them share. And then teacher informally assesses as students share, and then collects the papers to use as a formative assessment, so I can look at how the groups did and see, okay, they get this lesson, or nope, they still need some more work. So there's my lesson on narratives or in creative writing. Thank you.